You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello out there in podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and all those key elements that lift them above the average genre fare. If you're joining us for the first time, we would like to welcome you. I don't know how you found us, but we're glad you did. And if you're a returning visitor, we'd like to thank you for coming back. We are in our 4th season, and we are very happy to be here. And obviously you are if you've returned. So welcome all. I am Tim, and I am here with my podcast partner, David Horton. Hello, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you, partner?
Partner.
Partner. How are you?
I am doing well. How has your genre-related week gone this
Okay.
time?
Well, I have a surprise for you, genre-related week-wise.
Oh,
something you
cool.
you aren't aware of at all, but I have taken your advice and Joe's advice and a couple other people's advice, and I started. What?
I know what you're going to say.
No, you don't. No, you don't. What
do.
am I going to say then? Tell me.
Do you really want me to?
Yeah. Yeah. What do
You're
you
going to
think?
say you're watching Hannibal.
I am. I'm watching Hannibal. Yeah.
Yeah. As soon as you said Powell, I knew it, man.
And it's very well done. I mean, I'm only like 6 episodes in now, I think. But it's definitely heavy Brian Fuller influenced, which is great. It makes me very sad for what Discovery Star Trek could have been.
Yeah.
You know, but I went into it going, I'm going to really hate Mads Mikkelsen. I mean, why would anybody ever take that role after, after Silence of the Lambs? It's been done so incredibly well. Why would you ever want to attempt it? And went, okay, doing pretty good. Actually, I love the way he's playing it. I mean, it's really well done. I like the direction. I've always liked Graham's character in the books, and I never thought they really worked in the movies. I mean, I think the closest was Peterson in Red Dragon. I think he was the best Graham in it.
I don't even remember Norton because it's been so long since I saw Red Dragon, the remake,
right,
of Manhunter.
But Manhunter is the one I'm thinking of. The
Correct.
one by Michael Mann with William Peterson in the role of Will Graham. And because
that older guy, Brian Cox, I said older because he's older now, but he played Hannibal in that version. Yeah.
Correct. And but Will was always more fascinating to me than Hannibal was, really. And it wasn't until Silence that you really saw a lot more of Hannibal, and and then the way Anthony Hopkins did it, of course, was genius and all of that. So I was very curious to see how they would do this, and I've been very intrigued so far.
There's so many fun things they can play with. Like they're playing with the Hannibal that's never been caught, for one thing.
Yeah, the early Hannibal.
But if you've read the novel, you know that Will is almost eviscerated by Hannibal and has a horrible scar.
Yes.
And you're like waiting for when that's going to happen. I mean, there's like so many things you start remembering. And then you mentioned the guy with the pigs. I can't think of his name. He comes into the story. Dollarhide comes in this. I mean, there's just all these characters they can pull from with the novel, like from the novels. And I was talking to my neighbor the other day, and she's talking about Clarice, and they can't do any of that.
Nope.
Because there's some kind of licensing where I guess they just get Clarice Starling, and that's it. She can't even mention Lecter's name, I don't think.
Interesting.
I don't know how they did it, but somehow they licensed, I guess because Clarice Starling is only in one book, whereas...
No, she's in Hannibal too. She's in 2.
Oh, that's true. She is in Hannibal, but she the other characters, like Hannibal's in all the books, obviously. Graham is in, I don't know, maybe he's just in one book. I don't know. I don't know how they did it, but somehow I don't think this Clarice show is even going to compare to Hannibal.
Oh, no, I don't see how it could possibly. But it was interesting. I just saw the episode where it was basically they were, I'm going to do all these wink and nods to Silence of the Lambs. And it's talking about who does Fishburne play? He plays the
Crawford.
Crawford. His earlier really whip smart young student intern that he has go and interview the other killer, who happens to be in, glassed in walled prison cells all in a line that she has to walk. It was all these homages to Silence.
Right.
It's when they introduced Chilton and everything. And I was going, okay,
fantastic.
I was going, okay, this is some really clever stuff, because it's like, well, here's what you'll remember. We know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're just doing it our way now.
Yeah, I kept waiting for Lecter to mention the patient. Remember when in the movie Silence, when she finds the head in the jar in the car?
Mrs. Moffat. Yeah.
Is that her name?
No, that's the name that Lecter gives, which is actually an acronym. It's all twisted.
Okay.
It's a word jumble.
Okay. Because and I think they do eventually mention that patient, because he is a practicing psychiatrist in this show.
Oh, yes.
You see him sitting down with Will all the time and others as well. So it's very interesting to watch that.
Well, and I love seeing him manipulate people and the way he manipulates them, which is only hinted at even in Hannibal when Harris does a little bit of that retrospective. You see a little bit of Lecter in the way he was in practice, where he would intentionally do things to patients to push them over the edge in certain ways, just to watch them and see how they would do it. And I was going, yeah, this is great. This is great. Anyway, so highly recommended. Thank you guys for the recommendation. I'm watching it. I'm going to finish it, and it's going to be just killer awesome. All that.
Well, and one other thing, back to what you originally started with. I mean, what do you think about the production values for NBC?
NBC, I cannot believe they let them do that. Any of that. There are scenes in that I was going, really? You're doing slow motion blood splatter on NBC? That's just, this isn't a medical show. Well, how are you doing this?
Yeah, it's just a beautiful show. I would have never thought it was on network television, and I don't know that you'll ever see anything like it again. You're certainly not seeing it with Clarice. I've already heard the complaints.
Right. I don't think they have attempted it on other mainstreams. Not because this was like, yeah, I could see the producers going, okay, we want this to look like cable. Make this like an AMC show, or make this like an HBO show. So. Yeah. I mean, it's good. It's very well produced. It's very well acted. I love, putting Graham on the spectrum, which was something when Harris originally wrote the novels was not really discussed a lot. So, but it makes sense. And because that was the hang up, Will could put himself in the minds of these killers and catch them because nobody else could think like him. I like the gender casting and racial casting they've done, that are counterpoints, like Crawford being a black man was great. The Tadler reporter, instead of being that sleazy, overweight kind of tabloid guy you expected from the novels, he's like this really pretty redhead girl sort of thing.
I didn't even remember the one from the novel, but I like the girl in the show. For sure.
Oh yeah, because in Red Dragon, Dollarhide, ties him to a wheelchair and sets him on
fire. Yeah, that's how that movie starts. I think. I like the forensics crew too.
Yeah, that's a neat ad, and the fact that Will goes in with them during the autopsies and just kind of thinks through as they find stuff. I like all of that, and Will being a lecturer to tie that in, which he was in the books, but you never saw it anywhere in the movies or anything else.
No, and Scott Thompson's one of them from Kids in the Hall, which it's just weird casting, but I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a strong series. It's very well done.
Yeah.
So
okay, well, we might not get to our movie today because I'm going to talk about something that is of cinematic achievement, unparalleled. We're going to this movie, Trog.
Unparalleled is so true.
I can't remember what year this movie came out. Actually, I have my
72. I don't know.
1970, actually.
Okay, yeah.
It was Joan Crawford's final film for obvious reasons.
Yes. She says it was over. She goes, "This movie killed me."
Pretty much. I mean, she was an alcoholic at the time and was known to be taking a sip throughout production. But so much, even though it is a ridiculous movie about finding the missing link in a cave in England.
Yep. Alive.
Have you seen this movie?
Yes.
Do you recognize the makeup?
It looks like 2001.
It is. It is a mask left over from the movie 2001.
It makes perfect sense.
1 year or 2 years prior.
Oh my God.
I do like to make note of the fact that Freddie Francis directed this movie.
Oh my gosh. What a tie-in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of Hammer Films fame. And then, of course, Joan Crawford is in it. As I said, it was her last picture, but it didn't kill her. She lived another 6 or so years. She did some television and what have you. I don't know what else
have you.
Well, I know she did that. Steven Spielberg, his first Night Gallery. I think it was the pilot for Night Gallery, wasn't it?
Yeah. That Steven Spielberg did.
Yeah. So she was in that as well. I had read horror stories about her on this production, but the guy that played Trog, that little ape-looking man there, he had nothing but nice things to say about her. He said she was very professional. But yeah, I don't know where to go. But however, I would recommend it. I had never seen it, so I wanted to see it. And it was on Turner Classic Movies. So I was like, okay. So yeah, I have now finally seen Trog.
Yeah, I remember seeing it probably drive-in, I think, in a re-release. I didn't see it in 72, I don't think. But I remember just like it was one of those where jaw open, head cocked, looking at it, going, "What? Why did they do this movie?"
Oh, and Michael Go, I can't go. Gough is in it. I mean, that's another good old Hammer actor that went on to do a lot of Tim Burton movies. He played Alfred in the first Batman films of the 80s. So, right. I mean, it does have other folks in it, but it is terrible. It is so terrible, but it is really funny watching her call him like a dog. Trog, come here, Trog.
Yeah. Here, boy. Got some tasty treats for you.
Yeah, and it's clearly a man with just a mask on and like a furry shawl.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah. He's wearing a furry vest.
And his furry feet look like little mini go-go boots. So.
Yeah. Bad Hobbit. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it was a great print. And I had fun with it for an hour and a half. So anyway, that was my genre week.
I thought it was a great segue because you said Freddie Francis, who also did the cinematography for the movie we're talking about today.
Exactly. And I was going to bring that up.
How far the greats have fallen from when we were talking about Hammer movies and the great Freddie Francis and his directing and all of that. And now he's cinematographer to this young upstart filmmaker trying to do a science fiction film way beyond his reach.
Upstart auteur.
Yeah. So
I would let you do
Obviously,
the honors with this one.
obviously, those of you who have tuned in know that today we are talking about the incredible classic 1984 film Dune. It was directed by David Lynch. It was based on the novel and novels by Frank Herbert, which the director had never read before. He wrote his own screenplay for it. Stars a huge cast, which is one of the good points of this movie, actually, in many
Impressive
ways.
cast for sure.
But and I'm not sure how we want to handle this. I do have a lot of history about the actual book itself and where it came from and those kind of things. I also have a lot of internal history, but this movie is, just in general, before we do any kind of, I guess, whatever, what did you think of the movie? Let's start with you.
I
What
hate
did you
this
think
movie.
of this?
This movie is terrible. I mean,
What?
all right, let me, I will pull it back a little bit. I had never seen this movie.
Wow.
I knew it was a big book, like other big books that are filmed eventually. I don't know why. I mean, I guess I must have heard people like you from the beginning that saw it maybe opening weekend say, oh no, it's horrible. And I just never saw it. And I just had no interest in it. And I went almost 40 years without watching this movie. And then I sat down the other day to watch it. And I was like, oh, well, that was a good 40 years,
Yeah.
you know, not having seen it.
Well, it's interesting because I think by the time this episode airs for Johnny, the Apple Plus or the sci-fi, somebody is doing a new version.
Right. It's Villeneuve, the guy that did Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. He's got his new version coming out, and it will already be out, I think, by the time this airs. But we'll talk about it near the end. But I'm actually nervous now after watching this movie again and then seeing the trailer again for I was going,
is he just remaking it?
because don't do that. Please don't do that. But I got,
honestly,
there was,
not to be, to pull back even more. I'm a big fan of David Lynch to a certain degree, and I'm a big fan of some of the actors in this movie. But I think that it was a truncated version of something that should have been a series for like HBO or something. It felt like they were trying to do too much in too little space. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Okay. And
that
there are lots of
my assessment.
There's lots of contributing factors that kind of went together to destroy this project, to make it a failed thing. So maybe just a little bit of the history would help as far as so we know where we're coming from and what happened. And then I've literally got in my notes things wrong, and it just goes on for pages and pages.
Oh yeah.
And pages.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so just a brief history. So this novel was written around in the late 60s by Frank Herbert. He had actually written it as an ecological study. He had written it because he had been inspired by this particular grass that was growing in the dunes and was revitalizing this one area, and he saw it. So he actually wrote this almost like as an ecological sort of pastiche sort of thing. And that was, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. That was in the late 50s when the novels came out.
Okay.
And they were, I'm sorry, let me go back. I've got this confused with my other one I'm talking about, which is going to be Foundation by Asimov. That was 50s. This was actually late 60s, early 70s.
So he was high on a beach.
Yeah, basically, and wanted to do an ecological thing, sort of thing.
Okay.
So
grass, man.
He did. Yeah. So it was actually optioned and picked up in 1972 by one of your favorites, Arthur Jacobs, who had done Planet of the Apes. And he was going to turn this into a movie. He had hired David Lean to direct it, which was awesome and a great idea because Lean does these epic, sprawling, huge,
Lawrence of Arabia.
Lawrence Bridge on the River Kwai, all these great things. It was going to be produced in 74. It was going to be great, awesome. But then he died. He died in 1973, so the project kind of foundered. The rights became up for review, and they were picked up by an Italian group that ended up hiring or working with Alejandro Jodorowsky. And this is huge Hollywood myth. We've even talked about it on the podcast before.
There is actually I saw, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but there's a show about this myth on like Amazon or something. Yes. I saw the other day and I was like, wow. And it talks about his casting and all that stuff. I didn't watch it, but
you should. It's very interesting. But Jodorowsky's Dune was memorable because it was the Hollywood has this term for it called the greatest movie never made, because it could have been great. Basically, he was wanting this incredible, because this novel like blew science fiction people away. It's a huge herald of science fiction, and there's so many keys that came from it and everything else. And it's so inspired other works, even down to, one of the big keys for me is Wheel of Time, which is about to come out as a miniseries. Those 17 or 15 novels, huge, heavily influenced by Dune. Many things have been, and we'll talk about that. But Jodorowsky put together this incredible, coalition of people from Moebius, Dan O'Bannon, H.R. Giger, everybody. They had the entire...
I've got that he had Orson Welles and Gloria Swanson.
Yes, Orson Welles was going to play Baron Harkonnen.
And Pink Floyd was going to do the music.
Pink Floyd was going to do all the music. He really wanted, as he kind of put it in the documentary, he wanted an hallucinogenic journey that would elevate the human consciousness. He wanted people who watched this movie to feel like they were on melange, the spice, and that it would elevate you beyond yourself.
I mean, it doesn't sound too different from what Kubrick was trying to achieve with 2001 as well.
Correct. Very similar ambitions. And if you know the book at all, it really could have been, especially if you know the first two books. It really could have been. There are essentially 5 books, I think, in the series, 6 now. The last 2 were written by Herbert's son, based on his notes.
Of course.
But Jodorowsky, basically, he spent weeks and weeks with this whole group of incredible artists, storyboarded the entire movie, got everything ready to go. Then he went to a studio in America and went, "Hey, I'm ready to do my movie." And they went, "Okay, great. How much is it going to cost and how long is it?" And he goes, "Well, it'll be either 10 or 12 hours long, and I need X amount of millions to do it." And they went, "No, you need to do it in 2." And he went, "No, there's no way. This book is too huge to be condensed into 2 hours. You cannot do it in 2 hours. That's impossible." And they were going, "Well, you can't have any money unless it's going to be 2 hours." So the entire project folded. The good thing about it folding was that immediately then freed Dan O'Bannon and H.R. Giger and Moebius to go do that other little thing with that Ridley Scott guy.
Alien.
Yeah. So yay, that worked in our favor for science fiction.
Well, and Ridley was attached to this film as well.
Correct.
Did you know that?
Yeah. And it would have been, I would have loved to have seen. That's why so many people say, and you should watch the documentary. I think you'll have a new appreciation for the could have been of it. But yeah, it was, the greatest movie never made. It floundered for a few years, but in 1978, the rights were purchased by Dino De Laurentiis of Conan fame.
Dino doesn't have a lot of hits on his resume. He had a lot of money.
No, he had a lot of money, and he was he was a producer. He wanted to do a lot of movies.
I want to say he did Silence of the Lambs, didn't he?
No.
No? Okay. He has produced a couple of good ones, but not many.
No. And this is when Ridley Scott came into the picture. Ridley was hired based on, his work and everything else to turn this into a movie. However, his brother died. And reset. Ridley was hired, and Frank Herbert was hired to do the screenplay. So he was going to do a screenplay of his own novel. Yay, great. But we know with Stephen King, sometimes that doesn't work.
Right.
But Scott's older brother died, so he dropped out of the project, and it kind of floundered there. Rafaela decided, well, Ridley is such an auteur, and he's got a great vision. That's the kind of personality we need. This is Rafaela de Laurentiis. This was his daughter. So she became executive producer of it, and she hired this new up-and-coming dude who got so much press for Eraserhead and for, in my opinion, his greatest work, which is Elephant Man.
Elephant Man.
I'll take a step to the side here and just say, I love Twin Peaks. I loved Twin Peaks. I watched it. I had Twin Peaks parties. We, worshipped it, loved all the characters, loved the quirkiness, the craziness, everything else. Season 2 kind of foundered a little bit, but it still had some cool stuff for television, especially back in the 90s. He just came out last year with the 3rd season, which, in my opinion, and sorry, I'll probably be, strangled online for this, but
how dare you?
It's terrible. It's terrible, 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 awful. Makes no sense. It's a great example of giving an auteur too much money and too much control and letting them go and without any constraint. It proved to me even more that what made Twin Peaks work was Mark Frost and the fact that he was a good screenplay artist and he could take David Lynch's crazy visionary, oh my God, such cool stuff. Oh, let's just show the road in freaking Mulholland Drive for half an hour or whatever.
He would have said neato.
Yeah.
This is really neato.
And turn it into a cohesive story that actually can work or whatever.
Right. Or somewhat cohesive. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And sometimes great artists need that, I think. We've talked before about constraints and how they make you be more inventive or whatever.
You're giving Mark Frost a lot of the credit, which I had not thought of. But if I had to describe David Lynch, I would say that he is, and it may be a pigeonhole, but I think he's good at doing dark, quirky, odd, not science fiction epic, where it's just so random and so bizarre that you're like, what the fuck, man? Those voiceovers he kept throwing in there. I was like, wait. Anyway.
Oh, yeah. He was way out of his league for this movie. It wasn't what he did best. I mean, I think part of me used to think that Elephant Man was a fluke, but I just think it had such a tight screenplay. It was influenced so much by Mel Brooks' company, which wanted this to be a good movie very strongly. And I think they had a lot of constraint on Lynch. But he was also dealing with stuff he liked: industrialization, black and white, dark, moody, lots of fog, a huge impassioned disfigurement, all of these things that he liked later on. The only thing it didn't have is a 50s bent. It had a Victorian bent. So
right. And there was the play. The play at the time was really popular too. So a lot of it was probably carried over from the stage version, right? Elephant Man. A
lot of it, the obsession with the cathedral and the fact that how he died at the end, that sort of thing. Yeah, and I think that was Hampton write that? I can't remember who wrote that.
I just remember Bowie played it without makeup.
Yeah, all of the actors who played the play do it without makeup. They do it with just body contortion and everything else. But I used to think it was an anomaly, because I watched Mulholland Drive and went, "Oh, this is good. This is good. This now it's just what is going on? I don't understand."
That's like Wild at Heart.
Movies
yeah.
Yeah, I go, cool idea. What the hell is going on? I don't understand, and things are thrown in. And we'll see later on. I'm almost near the end of this history, but we'll see that, that kind of contributed to this. But Raffaella hired Lynch. He agreed he would adapt the book into 2 movies because the book, once he had never read the book, he'd never seen it, and he really didn't like it once he read it. But he said, I'll be glad to adapt this into 2 movies and we'll make it work, and everything else. The cast for this, when he ended up hiring everybody, was actually contracted for 3 movies because that's really practically how long it would take to tell the story, is the 1 book condensed into 3 movies sort of thing. To save on money, they were going to shoot in Mexico. They were going to shoot at the same time as Conan the Destroyer, so they could share on all the production costs and everything else. Yay, great, fine. Lynch, in his contract, he did not get to receive final cut or director's cut. His rough cut, when he finally ended up with it for the studio, was 3.5 hours long. And the studio said, you have to cut this to 2. And he goes, I cannot tell this story in 2 hours. The same thing that Jodorowsky had said. And so the studio said, fine, we'll do it for you. So he took his name off of it essentially for a while. It ended up coming back on, but he totally disowned it and said, and so they're the ones that added all the exposition with, Virginia Madsen, and doing all the historical, exposition dumps that were going on all over the place.
Did they refilm those or just?
Yeah, they added those to explain all these huge chunks they were taking out to cut out to make it 2 hours long.
Did they add those ridiculous over or like voiceovers?
I would love to think so, but no.
Yeah, that sounds like Lynch to me.
Lynch had all the voiceovers, but not all of them. They did add some, like the girl from my dreams. We know that, dude. We saw your dream. We don't.
She's so beautiful.
Not really. No, not really. With that thing in her nose. No, she's not. Anyway, the movie was so truncated, so cut down, so disjointed. Even the studio realized it. And I saw this movie opening weekend. So I used to have one of these, and it's lost in boxes somewhere. But they handed out a pamphlet with the history of the galaxy and a vocabulary list on it as you went into the movie.
No.
With like, what is Arrakis? What is melange? Who are the Bene Gesserit? All of that stuff.
That's too much work. I want to see the Avengers.
Well, class. I mean, so it was terrible. It ended up having when it finally aired on television, they added back in about an hour of material, 50 minutes of material.
Right.
That Lynch again took his name off of, so much so that he took his name off of it, and the screenplay he changed the name too.
Right. He hates this movie, he has bad memories of this movie for sure.
Yeah. And so then in 2000, there was another version of it, which was on Sci-Fi, that I think was 4 parts. And it was not a bad adaptation, but people kept comparing it to this movie. This movie had a grand vista. It looks huge. The sets, the costuming, the production design.
Some of the visuals are pretty good.
Yeah. And so when the Sci-Fi one did it for like, 1/10 of the cost, everybody was like, that's not what Arrakis looks like. Well, yeah, it is. It's what it's supposed to look like. You're just basing everything off the movie. And now in 21, we're going to have, Denis
Villeneuve.
Yeah, that guy is doing his version, which I'll just say kind of scares me, because now looking back at it, it's like his still suits look the same as those still suits. His design for the Imperial Throne Room looks the same as that Imperial Throne. And I'm going, please don't make this an homage to David Lynch. Make it Frank Herbert.
Do we know anything about the length of that film?
He has said that he is only covering the first half of the first book. That's all the movie is, which makes sense. So it will not have the huge climax that this one has and everything else. He's only doing probably up to where he begins the weirding way, I would think. Because they're hoping that it'll be, they're hoping exactly what Dino De Laurentiis and Raffaella wanted. They wanted Star Wars. So they wanted a 3-part series, but the studio wouldn't back that. They wanted a 2-hour movie first, and then we'll give you the money for the other 2. So this one, they're hoping, even though the studio's treating it the same way, we'll see how Dune does. If it does good, we'll give you money for another 2, but we'll see. The story itself is epic and sweeping and great and awesome and so good in the book, but then you watch it on the movie and you go, really? Some of the casting is terrible. Some of it's great, but all of the subtlety is gone.
If I had to describe my mood while watching it, it would be when the Baron Harkonnen is flying around in that suit in circles, just going, ah!
Yep.
That's the way I felt watching it. I had to watch it in 2 parts. I stopped in the middle of it and I picked it up the next day. I was like,
really?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's
And you're talking to somebody that can sit down and watch bad movies.
yeah. You just watched Trog.
I just watched Trog, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, the interesting thing
I'll tell you something I found out that I didn't know, since we're still talking history, is that David Lynch turned down Return of the Jedi. Did you know that?
Yes, but not to do this movie. That's an inaccurate.
I know, but he turned it down because he said it's not his thing.
Yeah, he didn't like science fiction.
Right. And yet he does this.
Right. And so let's hire him for our movie. No, let's don't.
And who in the hell thought it was a good idea to hire him for Return of the Jedi? George Lucas?
Yeah. George Lucas must have.
That's crazy.
I mean, he was hot at that time. After Elephant Man, he was really, really hot. That's kind of what got him the prestige to do other stuff. Yeah. I think if he had not done Elephant Man, we probably would never have had Twin Peaks or seen him again. Really,
I think you're right, because Eraserhead is a fucked up movie. I mean, it's a really fucked up movie.
Yeah, I think Basket Case is better than Eraserhead. Sorry, I said it, and that's what I mean.
Well, that's because Basket Case has a plot. Eraserhead's just a bunch of visuals strung together.
Oh yeah,
I mean, there's a very, very loose plot, but it's David Lynch considers this to be the failure of his career. I thought that was interesting. And like you said, he's pretty much disowned it. He's removed his name from it several times. And when interviewers bring it up, he won't answer the questions.
I can understand that.
He just pretends it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the novel itself. The novel itself is 900 plus pages.
Yeah, that's a big book.
So it's a big book. It's huge. And it's so, there is, as far as I remember, my version, I think I got, when I first read the book in like the late 70s, it had a glossary at the end of it. It had like an appendix that was an entire glossary
like
of
Clockwork Orange.
Of Benny Gesserit, yeah, like Clockwork Orange was, because there's so much history and structure and everything to the world that he created, which is impressive. I mean, as world building goes, this is really impressive. One of the big things that a lot of people exclude from this movie is the fact that these are humans. This isn't an alien culture. These are humans in the future. That's what he intended this to be. So this is the way humans would, colonize the galaxy.
Well, that's what I was wondering, because at one point in the movie, she does say something about being human. And I thought, well, did they colonize those planets, or are they just humanoid? I wasn't for sure.
Correct. We don't know how far in the future, because his timeline is based on, I think it's BG, which is before the Guild, or AG, after the Guild. So the spacing guild is really what determines the time frame of this. And this is centuries after that was formed. I mean, for those of you who haven't seen it, why are you listening to us again? We always ask that, but
they kind of dumb it down in the beginning when they show that graph of the 4 planets. This is this planet, this is the good guys, this is the bad guys, this is the desert planet with all the spice.
Correct.
You know, they
Yep.
really do kind of dumb it down. So at least I could follow that.
Yeah, and had they continued a little bit more, I don't want to say simplistic, but more of a straight through line, it would have been better. Uh, let me go through some of the mistakes they made, and that may help us because that will help us with seeing where Lynch may have tried to shoot for the moon and missed it, or where the studio screwed it up.
Okay,
I mean,
that's cool. And I do have casting stuff when you get done, so I can
Yeah.
talk about like alternates and stuff. Okay,
cool. We'll get there. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but I really love this novel, and this is one of those shoulda, coulda beens. I mean, you and I've talked about in the podcast before. I'd rather watch just a terrible movie that I can either make fun of or I can appreciate for how bad it was, a drive-in movie or whatever, rather than a could have been. Could have beens just irritate me because you had it. It was right there in front of you a lot, and you just let it slip away, you know, or whatever. You just screwed it up. So this is one of those. Basically, in this world of Dune at this time, you have the Imperium, which is the governing, all of the planets connected. They consist of the Emperor, the Spacing Guild, the Holy Houses of the Landstrad, which are all of these ruling houses. Think big key, Game of Thrones. The Bene Gesserit Sisterhood. And the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood is really in control of everything. This is a huge thing that Lynch, either through his misogyny or whatever, did not put in the book. I mean, in the movie, and it should have been. Really, everything that happens in this was initially created, started, inceptualized, whatever, by the Bene Gesserit, which a lot of people in the Imperium call the witches, because they have second sight. They can see the future in places.
They refer to her as like a soothsayer in the movie,
Correct.
Don't they?
And a witch. They call her, the Bene Gesserit witch has to leave the room or whatever, that sort of thing, because they are, Lynch uses them all the way through this movie. He uses them almost like they're servants. They're servants to the Emperor. They're servants to the Fremen. They're servants to, but they're not. They manipulate everything. The key element that he missed in this, which is the entire intent of the books, is that they have been trying to breed the Kwisatz Haderach for thousands of years. They have it all set up. They know exactly what's going to happen. And they've planted all of these little myths and everything everywhere, especially on Arrakis, because they are going to move the Atreides family and their house to Arrakis. She is going to have a daughter. That daughter is going to marry Baron Harkonnen's son, Fade, and they are going to have a child who is going to become the Kwisatz Haderach.
Is her name Roxanne?
Yes, it is. No. But so that was the overall goal, been going on for thousands of years. And it's all screwed up because Jessica, Duke Atreides' wife, decides to have a son instead of a daughter. And so she has Paul Atreides, who is the Luke Skywalker of this particular adventure, and is the typical, the typical, Campbell hero arc. I'm the young kid with destiny who doesn't know it and doesn't see my inner skills until they're taught to me by mentors, and then I change the galaxy, sort of attitude. Issues that were here, and here's just I'll just go through it really quick. My list of problems. The source material wasn't respected. Lynch said alone he didn't like the book. He didn't like it, so he just took sections out of it that didn't work for him, including the whole Bene Gesserit manipulation. Too much massive exposition dumps, whether done by him or the studio or whatever. There are entire sections of this where, and now we hear Virginia Madsen's voice, and we're going, who the hell is speaking? Because we're seeing someone different and we're hearing her voice. And she's telling us that this is what's supposed to happen here. And we have no clue what she's talking about. It's like, what? Is that the girl from the planets at the beginning? I don't understand. Anyway, All the internal monologues.
She's
suck.
the one that David Addison hooks up with after Matty Hayes leaves him.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
That's old
all of
school.
all of the internal monologue and that whole device and that whole attitude was stupid. That should just forget it. You can't do that. It doesn't work. And it works in a novel. It does not work in film. And we know that. It's boring. This movie is boring. Even the action scenes are boring. We are not invested in any characters. We don't emotionally care about anyone. So there's no investment. Biggest huge things to a lot of Dune fans, it rains on Arrakis. It never freaking rains on Arrakis. If it rained, you wouldn't have a story. You wouldn't have anything. And here's the big thing you'll like from a plot element. If you read Dune before you get to Dune Messiah, okay, first of all, Paul Atreides doesn't think he's special and doesn't think he's the Dune Messiah. He knows the weirding way, which is another thing that, okay, let's go back. Lynch totally destroyed the weirding way. The weirding way is not a gun. The weirding way is a martial arts that allows you to get close to your opponent and kill him. But he said, I don't want to do a movie about judo. So he made the weirding way, this weird audio gun thing that you could do, which basically just creates a bunch of explosions that we don't care about. But Paul, because his mother because the Bene Gesserit do the weirding way, they're able to do that. And that's how Paul learns, is from his mom. So he is a noble who knows the ways of the Bene Gesserit. Ooh, that makes him different and unique, which is what the myth is supposed to be. He's supposed to be manipulated by the Bene Gesserit, but they lose control of him because he's on Arrakis he's on Caladan with the Atreides. Anyway.
There are geeks out there worshiping you right now. Me, okay. I'm thinking about lunch.
Yeah, probably. Sorry, I'm droning on. I shouldn't.
That's okay.
The guns are not a point. There's like 3 or 4 different systemic things that he did wrong. The Bene Gesserit and their manipulation. The weirding way, because at this point, everybody has shields, like you see at the beginning of the Harkonnen, of the Atreides. You know, when Paul goes into his funky squared off CGI stuff when he's fighting?
Yeah, that's weird. That was a weird effect.
It's a personal shield. In the book, everybody in the Imperium has shields. So the only way you can fight is with swords and darts and bladed weapons. So you don't have guns. You don't have big lasers and blasters or any of that. Everything is up close and personal. So it makes it kind of very Game of Thrones sort of thing. But Lynch gets rid of all that. And then the third element he really gets rid of is Paul is not special. He's not the Messiah. He doesn't have special talents. He doesn't have special
he
abilities.
acted like Jesus Christ this whole movie.
Correct. All the way through it. And then he's got all of this stuff at the end where suddenly he makes it rain and we don't know why.
And he even talks about it in those internal monologues. Maybe I am the chosen one or whatever. I don't know.
The sleeper has awakened.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so horrible.
Yeah. Basically, the Bene Gesserit, myth seeded the Fremen to believe this Kwisatz Haderach would be their Messiah because they wanted a revolution. But Paul, in the end of the book, Paul realizes, oh my God, what have I done? I've really destroyed the Imperium, because now melange, the spice is not only some addictive substance, because it is, it gives you premonitions, visions, prescience, whatever it is. You become a soothsayer or a visionary if you take too much of it. You can also die if you take too much of it. But also it mutates the spacing guild so that they can do warp. That's the only way you can travel in space, is with melange. And now he has the Fremen in control of the planet. So the whole thing about God, Emperor of Dune, the second book, is, oh my God, what have I done? And what's this going to do to my children and the rest of the empire? Little things are there's so much history to all these planets that you can't get into in 2 hours.
That's what I'm saying. It sounds like this should be like a series on HBO that runs like 6 or 7 seasons or something. That's what it sounds like to me.
some characters are really great in the book and terrible. One of the best characters in the book is Duncan Idaho. Big key here in Indiana Jones. But Duncan Idaho, and he has 2 scenes in the movie. And the second one is when he's killed. But he's a huge character in the book because he's like a spy for the Atreides, and he's infiltrated the Fremen, and he knows all this stuff, and it's really cool.
Is that he's the one from Twin Peaks?
No, that's Stilgar the Fremen. Duncan Idaho was played by
I have it.
I forgot his name. Look up Duncan Idaho real quick. I can't remember his name.
Richard Jordan.
Richard Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking Rich Man, Poor Man when actually it's Logan's Run. He was in Logan's Run.
Yeah, he was the bad guy in Logan. That's right.
Yeah.
But Baron Harkonnen, to your point, Baron Harkonnen does not fly. He does not fly. He is overweight. As a matter of fact, he's described as almost slug-like, sitting on a throne. Hello, Jabba. But sort of thing. But he wears.
Well, now, was that in the book or was that in the movie?
In the book.
So but the book. So you're saying Jabba the Hutt was ripped off of him, probably?
Oh yeah,
yeah, gotcha. Okay.
But in the book, he wears a belt which allows his own body not to crush himself. It kind of it's like a
anti-gravity.
They call it a tensor, as opposed to a repulsor in Star Wars. It's called a tensor. That's those things. You see those things all the time with the Atreides that are like floating lights, like gold things that are floating around. Those are tensor webs, which are essentially anti-gravity sort of thing. And he has that built into a belt, which keeps him from essentially, folding.
I thought
up
it was
into
a
big
blimp.
slug.
I thought he was inflating himself.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I'm serious. That's what it looked like to me. He looked like a balloon.
Well, there's that. Yeah, no. One of the things that I thought was totally lost in the movie was the Sardaukar. The Sardaukar are like the Imperial Guard. In the book, there's this huge history with them because they're only selected from like this prison planet. They're trained from the time they're like 9. They're psychopathic, all of them. They're like these massive killers, and they're most incredible. They're kind of, to me, Game of Thrones, the eunuchs in Game of Thrones. You don't know Game of Thrones. There's a lot of keys to Game of Thrones in this movie, a lot.
Okay.
So that's in there. But basically, Frank Herbert has said, the movie's okay, but he hasn't totally disowned it because he liked seeing his work out there and more people got
it's
to
funny
read the
that
book.
you should say that. I know another fan of this movie.
Who?
And it's going to blow your mind, I bet.
Who?
I've got this. I may have to read it. I lifted it from IMDb, and it says, while most critics were negative toward this movie, writer Harlan Ellison was of a different opinion. In his 1989 book of criticism, Harlan Ellison is watching, he says that the $42 million production failed because critics were denied screenings at the last minute after several reschedules, a decision by Universal Pictures that, according to Ellison, made the movie community feel nervous and negative toward it before its release. Ellison eventually became one of the movie's first positive reviewers. I know. I mean, and you know how critical Ellison is. That seems so out of character to me.
Yeah, it seems like because
he would have read the book.
Or maybe that's political. I don't understand that at all.
I don't either. I don't either, but I found that fascinating.
Yeah.
Because I respect Harlan to a degree, and that's unusual. I'm like, I can't get on board with that.
It's interesting because the Herbert has said his 2 biggest themes of these books are that all leadership in any form should be questioned, and that's not in this. In this movie, we're supposed to follow Paul. He's the leader. He'll tell us what to do. This new kid that we've never seen before with blue eyes, he'll tell us what to do, whatever. And any form of prescience, cognition, visions, any of those are bad. Nobody should ever possess those. That was his 2 themes that he said he wanted to put in these books.
So he
question
like
leadership,
government.
and nobody should be able to see the future. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't like government,
Basically.
doesn't like witches.
Right.
It's Monty Python.
Right. Burn him. Yeah. So
I didn't vote for you.
and those are, again, a classic example. If those are the themes of the books, that's exactly what he did do in the movie. Leadership, and Paul can see the future and manipulate the future and make it rain on Arrakis for some reason. We don't know how, but he can. So it doesn't work with it. Okay, so what's good about the book or the movie? Do you like anything in this movie? You said the cast is good in places.
Well, it's a good cast, but a terrible script. So they look kind of ridiculous when they're acting. But I mean, it's still a good cast. I mean, some of the actors. I mean, obviously Patrick Stewart's in it. But the visuals, some of the visuals are really good. Some are terrible because of the opticals.
Anything in space is terrible.
Yeah, and any of the ships, like that gold Fort Knox thing that's flying around, I'm like, what is that? And those weird looking those weird tube looking ships.
The Spacing Guild. Those are transports for the Spacing Guild. See, basically, the way space works in this is this, and again, a big, huge thing: hyperspace and warp speed. You know, basically, those are the keys, either before and after this. But the Spacing Guild, the weird caterpillar-looking weird. By the way, that's a human in that big case with the big vagina lips thing, sort of smoking the
That's
melange.
a human.
That's a mutated human, supposed to be.
Because I thought it was a giant anus.
Yeah, the giant caterpillar anus with eyeballs. No, it's a human. That's why it has blue eyes.
And doesn't it shoot out like a death ray at one point out of its anus, and it like encapsulates the galaxy or something? Didn't I see that like in a vision or something?
In a vision, yeah. It's not his anus. It's out his pulsing lip.
Well, I know his mouth looks like an anus to me, but yeah, okay.
But no, he is transported. The Spacing Guild have the ability, based on years and years and years of smoking a bunch of melange and eating it and taking all this drug in, basically, they can fold space.
Oh, I did get that concept. It's like a different kind of space travel.
So if you want to travel in this Imperium, you take all of your ships and you put them in this great big transport tube, which isn't supposed to look like a cigar box in the movie. Like, it looks like a big tube.
Yeah,
and
it looked weird.
Then the Spacing Guild will move you through space by folding space to the other location. And then you get out of the tube. Okay. And you attack the planet or do whatever, or fly around. You know, that's the way space works.
You go into the Mutara Nebula.
Right.
Yeah.
I personally, it's strangely compelling because I really like about 80% of the costume design a lot. Especially with some of the cooler stuff. Like, I like the Bene Gesserit costumes. I like Jessica's costumes. I like using that kind of Babylon 5, sort of the Atreides are these, you know, they look like the Imperial Navy. They have the epaulets and they have all the medals and everybody's in navy blue, you know, and all that. But then you have the Fremen, who are all like Arabic warriors, you know, they wearing the brown suits and everything is very sand colored and all of that.
I read somewhere, I'm assuming it's those water suits. I can't remember that.
The still suits.
Patrick Stewart and Sydal said they were the most uncomfortable costume they've ever had to wear in a movie ever.
Oh yeah. They were skin tight. They were really laced up and strapped and everything else. And the key for that one is they were the inspiration for, Batman's costume for the one that Tim Burton did. Yep.
Okay. But I thought that was funny. They said they liked the way they looked in them, but they hated wearing them.
Yeah. And you were in the middle of the Mexican desert in 120-degree heat, right, in that rubber suit. Yeah. It was uncomfortable. But, you know, I love the art direction. I think you can definitely tell the difference between Caladan, where the Atreides were, the water planet, Arrakis, where most of the bulk of the movie takes place. Definitely Gidi Prime, which is the planet where the Harkonnens live. That really
didn't Whitlock do the paintings?
Yes. Yep.
See, I think what you're saying, when I say I like the visuals and you're saying it too, I think we owe that to Whitlock and Freddie Francis. the
Well,
cinematographer.
and Carlo Rambaldi did all of the makeup and the monster effects. So
Well,
he did
some of
like
the monsters I didn't like. I didn't like that big anus.
Well, but it looked cool. I mean, it had a cool eyeball and everything. But Anthony Masters is kind of underrated. He was the production designer. He's the guy that really did a lot of the production design, and he came from 2001.
Okay.
And he also did art direction for Conan the Barbarian and Conan the Destroyer, which you can tell in some of those more grandiose sets and everything.
Yeah, some of the visuals are great, but then they'll do an optical of like a person in front of something, and it's clearly not matched, and you're like thrown out of it all of a sudden.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, pre-CGI, of course, and all that. So everything is optical matted or green screened or whatever. At that point, probably blue screened, I think, was what they were still doing in 80s. But you had some of the cast is cast perfectly. Some of it's cast badly. One of the badly cast, unfortunately, is Kyle MacLachlan, because Paul Atreides is supposed to be about 16 years old.
Okay.
And Kyle ain't no teenager. Just got to tell you.
No, and I wasn't impressed with him in this either, acting wise.
No, he was very stilted in this. I thought. But it had, but you know, Jürgen Prochnow is Leto Atreides is a great casting. That was great. I think Francesca Annis was a very good Lady Jessica. She was believable. She was great.
Brad Dourif, who's usually great in everything, is terrible in this.
Yeah, he's again. There's no restraint to any of this from a screenplay wise. From a music is. Oh my gosh. I love the theme. I wish they had just stuck with it, but instead there are times when Toto just throws in guitars.
I was going to get there.
Reason.
I'm like, are you telling me that really Toto did the music for this movie?
Yeah.
And the music you like was Brian Eno, which makes sense. I mean, that's a Bowie guy from Germany that does like really eclectic music of the late 80s or mid 80s.
Yes,
actually late 70s, mid 80s. But so Brian Eno, I could see doing the music, but then Toto, I'm like, is that the band? Is that really is that Rosanna?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I don't think they did any others, but I'm not sure.
Hopefully not. No. But this whole movie, there's so many times where it's over the top. Brad Dourif is one of those. He just,
and I was wondering if, Lynch said, give it everything. And, he did, just like in that episode of the X-Files Beyond the Sea, where he's just intense, but it's not filmed correctly. It's like all David did was put a camera on him straight forward and let him go. And I'm like, you should have done some angles or some close-ups or something. It to me, it was more Lynch's fault maybe than it was Brad Dourif's fault. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let me give you a characterization and see if this works for you as far as what it's supposed to be. This particular character is considered a genius, especially a diplomatic genius. He is actually manipulating the emperor more than he even knows. Do you know what character that may be? He's a strategic and diplomatic genius.
Wow,
is the way he's described in the book. It's Baron Harkonnen.
The one that's running around screaming all the time.
Yeah, Kenneth McMillan is
floating
terrible.
around screaming all the time.
He's terrible in this part. He's way over the top. He screams or laughs all the time. He has scenes that don't even make any sense, like I'm alive for whatever. And then he's got this homoerotic weirdness that I'm not sure what was going on with that.
He was clearly gay and hot for Sting, who I thought was his son, and I was like,
that is his son.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay,
that's fake.
I wasn't wrong there. It was very, very odd.
I did read a trivia thing that said that Sting only agreed to play Fade Rotha because this was his first movie.
Right.
He agreed to do it because David Bowie said he would be good in it, I saw that in a trivia thing. And because the scene where he comes out of the sonic shower, he would be totally nude. And he couldn't wait for that. He thought that would be a great debut.
Right.
But instead he's wearing like a winged
Yeah, they made him put on like a loincloth type thing.
Yeah, like a codpiece sort of thing.
Right.
Yeah, didn't work for me. I did think
I got news for Sting. Even his penis couldn't save this movie. No, regardless of how well he thinks of it.
Well, I did think Patrick Stewart tried. He did good as Gurney Halleck.
And there's times when he's a little overplayed too. And I was like, there's something wrong with the direction here, because he is not a bad actor. Something's going on with the way they're filming this.
There is a scene that to me is the epitome of why Dune sucks so bad. And it is when they're fighting the Harkonnens during the big charge, and it cuts to Gurney Halleck, who's supposed to be this incredible strategic military genius. He is holding a dagger and a pug dog.
Yes.
And says, for Duke Leto, and they go running down the hill, and I'm going, what the hell?
And that's totally David Lynch. He said, "Oh, let's put a dog in his hands."
Yeah, have the dog. You got Duke Leto's dog with you. Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck? And like later on, I may have imagined it, but did he all of a sudden have a mullet?
Who?
Patrick Stewart. Like later on, after he had been on Arrakis for a while, it's like his hair got long, and I could have sworn I saw like some long hair.
Oh yeah, when we haven't even heard from him in half an hour of the movie, and suddenly Paul runs into him, and I'm going, wait, I've got it in my notes. Where did I put it? Because I said, so, and I've got all the O's. So Gurney Halleck has just been living out in the desert, and he hasn't heard about Muad'Dib or Paul or Weirding or any of this, and he suddenly just shows up at the last battle.
Well, and I had a question also with the Fremen. Those are the natives on the planet or whatever with the spice.
Yeah, the Fremen.
I was like, so are these all people that just were trying to get the spice and never got it and just stayed there? So if they all look like they were like colonists or something.
There are essays and stuff like that say that Herbert's view of the Fremen they were like the Palestinians. They're the Middle Easterns that are oppressed all these years, and you don't know how many of them are really there. That there really are in the thousands and the millions on this planet, and they've been oppressed all this time.
I felt
and they just need a leader.
Like Khan and his tribe. They just kind of got left on that planet and started populating it, is what it looked like to me.
Well, and the thing is, they're supposed to be the good guys, but we don't spend enough time with them to even know anything about them other than, oh, that's Paul's army now. Okay.
And that you can ride a giant worm with a rope.
Yeah. That's not supposed to happen. Yeah, that was.
But I do have a little bit of casting before we move on, since we were talking about Patrick Stewart.
Yeah. Do it.
Lady Jessica, you said she was played well by Francesca Annis. Apparently, Glenn Close turned the role down, saying that she did not want to play a girl who is always running and falling down behind the men. Others that were considered to play her were, here's a list: Jodie Foster, Brooke Shields, Kim Basinger, Melanie Griffith, Michelle Pfeiffer, Meg Ryan, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Christy McNichol, Tatum O'Neal, Bridget Fonda, and Sarah Jessica Parker.
We needed that. Why were we going that way? I don't understand. Jessica is supposed to be
Christy McNichol and the Brooke Shields are the two that got me. I was like, oh yeah, bring it on, Blue Lagoon.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Oh my gosh.
I don't have anything on Leonardo Cimino, Brad Dourif, Jose Ferrer. However, I will say there are 2 Oscar winners and 5 Oscar nominees in this movie, so that speaks a little highly of the cast. Linda Hunt is one of those. Freddie Jones is the guy that has the big eyebrows. Richard Jordan, who I confused for a TV
Yeah,
actor.
Okay. Something that's again totally lost on this. There are a group of males who have taken a lot of melange and are psychic. They're called mentats. They're not so psychic as they are extraordinarily intelligent. Their intelligence has been boosted by their environment and genetic training and all this. Because if you notice in this movie, there are no computers. It's supposed to be set in the future. But so all computing and massive mathematics are done by mentats. That's their name. And each family has their own, like an advisor. So for Baron Harkonnen, his mentat is Brad Dourif. That's supposed to be the smartest man on his planet. It's Brad,
He's
the guy
intense.
that's going, whatever the hell. Who gestures other than Jeff Goldblum? Who could ever gesture like this for no reason? What? But the other one is Thufir Hawat, who is Freddie Jones. That's Duke Atreides' mentat.
Right.
But you don't see that. You don't see him being a smart guy. You just see him going, I'm like Paul's personal advisor.
Yeah, with the bushy eyebrows.
Okay, so, Babylon 5 had the wing hair. Come on. There are certain decisions that are made occasionally.
Richard Jordan from Logan's Run. Like I said, I couldn't remember what he was from. I had to look him up. I was thinking he was in like a TV miniseries like Rich Man, Poor Man, but that was not him. Kyle MacLachlan, you were talking about how he's terribly miscast. Well, what do you think of these alternatives? Rob Lowe turned it down.
Thank God. That would have been worse.
Val Kilmer turned it down. And one other person auditioned, and that would be Christopher Reeve, who also seems too old. All of those guys seem too old.
All of them are too old for that. I'm not sure who is around in 84 that would be in the age range, but not them.
Yeah.
That's, I don't know.
It's like they were looking for pretty people. All three of those are pretty men. And so is Kyle MacLachlan. So it's like they obviously had a type in mind for the role, which was the wrong one.
And it's interesting because I really like MacLachlan in
Twin Peaks.
In Twin Peaks, of course.
And Blue Velvet.
I even like him in Blue Velvet, and I like him in Showgirls. I like him in that too. He's a pretty, he learned a lot, obviously, and got better. But this is, it's such that cast is a good representation of a hit and miss. You could have had it, but you didn't, and you're almost there, but you're not. You
mentioned Virginia Madsen, who we know from Candyman, as well as Moonlighting, my Matty Hayes, David Addison reference. She was originally supposed to be Helena Bonham Carter, who was replaced last minute due to a scheduling conflict.
Okay.
Which, I could see that being a little better, but I don't know that there's much to that part anyway.
Well, it's a setup. She's huge in the second book. The Emperor's daughter becomes a big deal, especially with Leto II, who is Paul's son. That becomes a big deal in the second book. So that's kind of what she was set up to be. But she shouldn't be the narrator. She has no vested interest in it. Right. That's the point about this whole movie. We don't care about anybody in this movie.
No. And had it been a hit, David was opting to do future sequels until he disowned it.
Well, yeah, the De Laurentiis both Raphael and Dino wanted 3 movies. They wanted Star Wars, and that's not going to happen.
No. A few other. All right. Well, I don't have anything on Savannah Mangano or Everett McGill, who was also in Twin Peaks. Kenneth McMillan, who is the screaming Baron Harkonnen. Jack Nance and Sean Phillips. You mentioned Jurgen Prochnow, and then I like Paul Smith, but he's just a screaming idiot in this movie too.
He plays Raban.
The Beast. Yeah, the Beast Raban. So then we get to Patrick Stewart. Aldo Ray. Do you remember him? B-movie actor. Aldo Ray?
Vaguely. I know the name, but I don't know what.
He was a big B movie actor, did a lot of Westerns, but he was also like a raging alcoholic. He was originally cast as Gurney, but was let go because of his alcoholism. Lynch had worked with Ray's wife, a casting agent, Joanna Ray, who cast most of his projects from Blue Velvet on, and their son, Eric Da Ray, I don't get that at all, who played the role of Leo Johnson in Twin Peaks. So Aldo Ray's son is Leo in Twin Peaks, and apparently his wife was a casting director. I had no idea any of that. I just know Aldo Ray.
I didn't either.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's just interconnections of Hollywood. And according to the biography, 5 Easy Decades, Jack Nicholson at one point in the late 70s considered directing Dune.
Okay.
Didn't he do Going South? He did a couple of movies, but he decided that it would be too much of an undertaking. He also turned down the role of Gurney Halleck. So he was up for it too. Talk about Academy Award people.
Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. Dean Stockwell, who we know from Quantum Leap, as well as The Dunwich Horror, played Dr. Wellington Yua, or Dr. Yua is what they refer to him as the movie. Apparently that movie was offered to another Elephant Man alum, Jonathan Hurt from Alien as well. John Hurt was offered that part.
Okay.
Max von Sydow, I don't have anything. Alicia Witt, I don't have anything. Sean Young, I didn't even realize was in this movie until I went and did the notes. I was like, well, that was her.
She's beautiful.
She's not that pretty.
The girl from my dreams, with mud on her face and sand. And stuff.
So that's all I have for casting. But I did have some alternatives, which those people are glad they're alternatives and not in it.
Yeah. I mean, this movie bombed from the day it opened. It just did not do well, ever. It's become kind of a cult classic now. And I have to say, I would kind of agree with that because it's different. It's unique, I mean, even the stuff that I look at and go, how I have to kind of take it with a grain of salt. How much of this would I like if I had not read the book? Would I even buy this or buy it? That's why I was really curious about your reaction. Well,
that's why I texted you and said we could run it as a double feature with Barbarella. Because Barbarella is pretty and unique and crazy, and so is this movie,
Yeah. It's a unique design and some unique visuals and a difference. But
Vadim is a sexual director. He's going to make a sexy movie regardless of how ridiculous it is, and that's what Barbarella is. So there is a difference there, but both of them are strong visually.
We've had movies that were strong visually that actually worked too. I mean, a good example would be like anything by Ken Russell, Altered State.
He's a key for me in this movie.
Is artsy, but he still gets the story across. Lynch he was hamstrung because he had so much story that he couldn't compress it into what he needed to do.
And his solution was voiceovers, ridiculous voiceovers.
Yeah. And just weird cutting that didn't work, and action scenes that we don't care about, and characters that come and go for no freaking reason, and we don't care. You can't force fit emotional resonance on an audience. Just because you have a good-looking young guy doesn't mean the audience is going to think, "Oh, he's my hero. I'm going to root for him."
Yeah.
Because if he sucks, we're not going to like him, so it doesn't matter.
All of this being said, this movie was nominated for an Academy Award for sound. It did not win.
It did not deserve to win.
It did not win, but it did.
Toto had electric guitars.
To your credit, it did win a Saturn Award for Best Costumes. So
I would give it that. I think, but see, a lot of the costumes were later repurposed, reused, everything else, and we see them in everything else.
Yeah. It was nominated for Best Film, Best Makeup, and Best Special Effects by Saturn Awards, the Sci-Fi, Fantasy, and Horror Film Awards. Yeah, they missed the call on that one, but I'll give them costumes. And then it was nominated for Dramatic Presentation as a Hugo Award. This is the best one right here. The Stinker Bad Movie Awards. It won Worst Picture, Rafaela de Laurentiis.
There you go.
I've never heard of the Stinker Awards, but I kind of like it.
Well deserved. Well deserved. I mean, we used to say, this movie sucked, but it didn't suck as bad as Dune. You remember that. I used to say that all the time.
I do remember y'all saying that. That's why I never watched it.
Dune it's just sad that it's based on such a great work of art.
We've been chatting, and yet again I have neglected to show all these pictures I have from the movie.
Well, you haven't really mentioned him, but that's Max von Sydow, and he was big. I mean, that was that except for MacLachlan in that one picture there, you got Patrick Stewart, Sydow, and Jürgen Prochnow, 3 great actors all together.
And Jürgen's known for what? Das Boot?
Das Boot was his first one, his big hit. Yeah, basically.
And then what else? Oh, that's the same one. Oh, there's the sandworm. I mean, that was the thing I knew about this movie, is that the sandworm was the big thing about this movie. I don't know if it was because of the effects or what have you, but that's what I take when I hear Dune. I think sandworm.
Well, and when you hear the voiceover of the spice and the sandworm, is there a connection? Well, of course there's a connection, you dumbass. How could there not be? These things are the size of buildings, for God's sake.
I love it when he climbs up one on a rope, and it's like rodeo sandworm. I've tamed it. I'm like, no, you haven't. You're just standing on top of it. All it has to do is move and you'd fall.
Right. And they carry that over into the final battle, where all the Fremen are riding them like they're military transports, and I'm going, okay, so wait, the thing was under the sand for the entire time until you got on its back. Now it's not going under the sand. Or it's just going to ride on top like a snake. And then you've got a picture of the battle at the end between, which in the novel is a fairly big deal, because to the Bene Gesserit, Paul was supposed to be Fade's son, but he was born a generation too early. But you've got Gurney Halleck administrating a duel in front of the Emperor between Paul and Fade. And if you had known about, bladed weapons are the only way you can fight, this is important, this would be really cool. But no, we just saw a bunch of lasers and blasters and weirding ways, and now we're going to stop the whole climax of the movie to have a fight, a knife fight. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work. Right.
No, it doesn't. Even with that cool special effect of them turning into cubes or whatever.
Oh, the shields?
Yeah, I thought that was not bad for the time. I thought that was a pretty cool effect.
Yeah. Well, they also had to waste tons of money because, the big deal is if you've gotten enough melange, the spice, your eyes turn blue. And that's how all the Fremen, so every Fremen should have blue eyes, everything else. But they tried contact lenses. They couldn't keep them in Mexico because they hurt too bad, and everything else with the arid weather and the desert and all that. So then I read a trivia thing that said Rafaela, actually, to show up Lynch, put blue dye in her eyes and almost blinded herself because she was trying to show him they could do it cheaper.
Oh, my God.
That didn't work.
No.
So they ended up spending a ton of money and time painting in all the eyes blue. So all that is an effect that they had to add optically.
But that's what I thought it was. I didn't know they painted it. I guess they didn't have CGI then because it would have been easier.
Right. It was rotoscoping. They had to go frame by frame and
they look weird. It's like their whole eye is purple, not just the iris.
Oh yeah, no, their eyes turn blue. Right. They have blue eyes. Yeah.
And it's not really blue. It looked kind of purple to me.
Yeah.
It's cobalt. So
it's cobalt blue. It's teal. It's a little bit of teal. Maybe some Prussian blue. But yeah, it didn't work.
Before we go to
Keys?
Keys. I have one thing. I was going to save it to the end, but I'll just go ahead and say it. I texted you at one point. I don't know if you knew what I was talking about, but I said, I said, oh my God, what is the name of that planet? Arrakis?
Arrakis, not Arrakis.
Arrakis.
Arrakis is a spider planet. This is Arrakis.
Well, I texted you. I said, oh my God, there's an ocean on Arrakis. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You're talking about the end when they...
when it rains? No.
When it rains? Are you talking about that one shot that looks weird where you see like the waves coming in from the south kind of thing?
And it's clearly a shot of the Dover Cliffs, and that's the ocean down in the corner, and I guess we weren't supposed to notice it.
Right. Or they colored it so it was supposed to be like a sandstorm that was coming. Yeah,
ridiculous.
Right.
When I saw it, I said, I cannot believe this made it into this movie, because this planet has no water on it, and that's all they've made the big deal about, how there's no water. And he says, can we get through the wall? And they show him looking through these goggles at this cliff, and you clearly see the ocean at the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was terrible. I agree.
Awful.
Almost as bad as the gold clunky pointed spaceship for the Emperor.
Fort Knox. It looks
terrible.
like flying Fort Knox to me or something. It's weird.
Yes. Well, I have a trivia one I found for you that I thought you would just love. You know, the very beginning of the movie is the arrival of the Spacing Guild at the Imperium. They arrive on the Emperor's planet, essentially. And they don't visit. They stay on their own. They're out there. They never come anywhere. But suddenly they're arriving on Khitan, which is the Imperial Palace and all that. And, you know, the big, huge, a bunch of guys in black get off. One guy has the funky microphone because they speak a different language and has to translate it. And that's where you see the giant, the navigator is what they're called, but they're, you know, giant slug anuses sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, he's the one that wants the spice. He's the first one to mention the spice. The big anus.
Yeah, because they have to have it. That's what keeps them alive. They're mutated. And that's also what makes the Spacing Guild work. So that's how they can fly. So the spice must flow. The spice must flow, you know, everything. Anyway, those costumes that they're wearing, because they're all in those black, weird looking, very David Lynchian. They look like weird black monk's robes. Kind of things. Those were a last minute addition. They are body bags. They have modified body bags for all those.
That's hilarious. I know exactly what you're talking about. When I saw them, I was like, those look like garbage bags.
Yeah, they are modified body bags. And the pièce de résistance for my friend Tim, most of them were used. And Lynch did not tell the cast that these were used body bags, because that's all they could get.
That's like that casket we had for Greater Tuna. Remember that?
Yeah.
There was like a stain in it.
Yeah, well. But yes, so
we got that from Hugh McNeil. Well, I think we got that from a mortician, didn't we? Yeah.
Those were used body bags.
Wow.
That, they used for that.
Yeah, that's what I want to wear for a costume, you know, all hot and sweaty and a used body bag. Nice. I'm sure they smell great.
Keys, as we're droning on here.
I have just a handful of random ones.
I'll save my Star Wars keys for last. So, but we can go to.
You got individual ones?
I've got a ton of Star Wars keys. I mean, literally.
I've been typing some of these in, like Game of Thrones and stuff that I don't know.
Well, a lot of movie references. Game of Thrones, Fifth Element, Flash Gordon, the movie, the one that Max von Sydow was in.
Actually, Flash Gordon would make a great double feature with Barbarella too.
Yep. Actually, that would make a really good double feature. We should.
Yeah, we should probably get on that. Maybe we could. Maybe we could do that this season.
What do you have?
The first one I have is Ken Russell, because of all those weird visuals of like floating hands and bright flashes and water and sand and stuff. It's just like, I felt like I was watching Altered States at times. And that's why when you mentioned him, I was like, yeah. But then again, Lynch is very much is very similar to Ken Russell in the way he sometimes will just show a montage of strange things. Usually they're grotesque, and that's why my second one is Eraserhead, because there's like some weird imagery in this as well, and you've
I
got
could see
that,
that.
like I said, that thing that looks like an anus. Yeah. So Eraserhead, or
Yes.
just David Lynch in general. So he's a key to himself in this movie.
I've got lots of production design stuff. Pitch Black, the movie that came out and then became like a trilogy, I think, with Vin Diesel.
I saw the first one. Yeah.
Heavily influenced by especially the Emperor's design and everything else.
It's a desert planet too, isn't it? Kind of.
Yeah. I mentioned Wheel of Time. Masters of the Universe came out, in the late 80s and early 90s too, and that was another one that was influenced by this from a design element.
You're talking about He-Man?
Yeah.
He-Man.
The movie, not the cartoon.
Okay. My nephews were into that at the time. They were little.
Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice has sandworms. At the end when
Does
they
it?
put it, when he sends them, anytime Beetlejuice sends them away through the doorway, they land on the desert planet that has all the sandworms. Yep.
I haven't seen that movie in so long, I don't even remember it. Okay.
Do you have any others?
I have Clive Barker. There's some things in there that have like their ears and eyes sewed shut, and I was like, oh my God, that's a Cenobite.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
I hadn't thought of that, but that's really, because Harkonnen only lets his attendants, he doesn't want them to see or hear his secrets. So he blinds them and sews their ears shut.
Yeah. And I was like, this is about three years before Hellraiser. I wonder if it predated this story, if he got his idea from that, because that's what they look like.
There's a mini Cenobite right there. Yeah.
Right.
I could see that. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah,
Wheel of Time I mentioned before. They have a ruling class of women with special powers called the Aes Sedai, and they're a huge political realm of the novels, and that's very much into this. I had said that Jodorowsky essentially he hired Mobius and H.R. Giger to storyboard the entire movie. Those storyboards have then gone on to inspire other movies like Alien, Prometheus, even Raiders of the Lost Ark. Their images, and he has this whole fountain thing at the end that goes up to the sky, and a big opening opens up in the storyboards, and it looks just like the very end of Raiders of the Lost Ark when the Ark is opened, sort of thing. I said Duncan, Idaho is the inspiration for Indiana Jones. I don't remember the name, and maybe our fans can tell us, but there's a game that's been going on for a while, especially during COVID, where you joined it online and one of you in the party is the killer, but you don't tell anybody who you are, and it's like The Thing. You're slowly trying to kill other people without being caught.
Is it Escape Room?
No, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a really popular game. I mean, my son and daughter-in-law played it. Marissa played it. All of them. I never played it, but the design of them is you're wearing like this big, huge hooded suit with this spacesuit with this. It's really bulky and round, and a plate in the front that glows green, and it looks just like the Sardaukar are in the action scenes, the battle warriors. They look. I don't
know what that is.
But yeah, that's those. And then Star Wars. One
last one.
Do your last one, then I'll do Star Wars.
The picture behind me when he's having that duel with Fade. Reminded me of Hamlet, because that big duel comes at the end of Hamlet.
But and that would have been cool if we had better deaths or something we cared about.
Right. I was going to say, God forbid I compare this movie to Shakespeare, because it is anything but it did remind me of Hamlet, the way it was set up.
if there had been any stakes at all, I'll tell you, I watched this
And there
again.
was a
This is
poison
probably,
tip too, wasn't there? Because he said a voiceover. There's
yeah,
poison on that, or something.
that was
or
that was
whatever.
when he had his little special side hook that came
Mhm.
out of his belt.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that's very
sort of
Hamlet
thing.
too.
And you
So
hear the voiceover say, poison. Yeah, very Hamlet.
exactly.
That's a great one. I mean, I'll say this is like the fifth time I've seen this movie, and the only emotional resonance I have at all is I feel sorry for Duke Leto from the very beginning, because they play him up as such a doomed character. And, you know, even the Bene Gesserit says, I can't save the father, but you can save the son, you know, that sort of thing. And so I really care about Jürgen Prochnow character, but he's the only one. He dies like in the first 20 minutes. You know? So there's that.
Yeah.
So, as I have always said throughout my entire life, if you want to know what Dune is about, or if you like Star Wars, you'll like Dune, because so many things are taken from Dune by George Lucas.
Oh.
It's a desert planet. There's a worm slug guy sitting on a throne. Luke, in his very first movie, uses electronic binoculars to see the moving ocean on Arrakis.
There you go.
But, the Spacing Guild becomes the Trade Federation. Yeah, Arrakis is Tatooine. It's the same sort of thing, even down to you have a great big sandworm called a sarlacc that lives inside the desert, and you have to throw people in its maw, kind of thing. Paul Atreides and Luke Skywalker. Actually, and ironically, both of those names are from the Bible. I thought that was interesting. I saw that online too. They mention in 2 or 3 of the Star Wars saga, the spice mines of Kessel, and spice must flow. Jedi training was the weirding way. The weirding way was what Jedi training should have been.
Yeah. I could see that. I just thought they made up that word. I was like, did David made it? I thought Lynch made up that word because it was just weird. Weirding.
No, in the book, they call it the weirding way. And it's this philosophy of personal combat. Which was very inspired for Herbert. It came essentially from samurai and Far Eastern training, you know, judo, jiu-jitsu, karate, all that. In Dune, you have suspensors, which are those floating things. In Star Wars Galaxy, you have repulsors, which allow everything to fly and float, and to allow Luke to have his little hover car. Paul's sister, who is born with all these special powers to see the future, is called Aaliyah. And Luke's sister, who later on shows, you know, has the Force and can be premonitions, is called Leia. Baron Harkonnen, in the book, it's a big, huge reveal. You find out, oh my God, that's actually Paul's grandfather. He actually gave birth to Jessica in the novel. And ironically, Darth Vader is Luke's father. Paul, when he's born, has a set of twins when they're born in the second book. And in Star Wars, Luke and Leia are twins, supposedly.
So George Lucas was reading all this shit in the early 70s.
Oh, yeah. The Bene Gesserit use what's called the voice. You know, you hear in that voiceover, Paul is trying to use the voice because he has it. And they can control people by using their voice. You know, that's how Jessica and Paul get the guards to stop raping her and instead allow Paul to kill them. You know, the 2 guards that are going to take him to the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're using the voice, which
yeah,
in
I
Star Wars,
thought that was very odd. I was like, if they could do that, they could have gotten out of a lot of other situations.
Yeah, which they do in the book. Which, though, in Star Wars is the Jedi mind trick. You know, these aren't the droids you're looking for. And all of Stilgar and the Fremen and everything else essentially do what's briefly mentioned in the movie called dew farming, which is the way they save water on the planet of Arrakis in the novel. And Luke's aunt and uncle run a moisture farm on Tatooine. So that's just a little bit. There are probably a dozen more that Lucas just went, hey, I'm going to tell Dune, just do it in a different way. So there you go.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. It told it much better though, actually.
Well, he made
This
it. He
movie.
made it almost feel episodic in an old-fashioned serial kind of way, like the Flash Gordons that used to air
Yes.
before movies, like previews, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the book and what this movie should have been is a science fiction political intrigue story, is what it should have been. But Lucas turned his into like a space opera,
Action, yeah.
an action adventure sort of thing. This should have been Game of Thrones in space, which is where Game of Thrones came from, actually.
Well, I can tell you what it's considered.
Sure.
It has been called the Heaven's Gate of science fiction movies.
I would agree with that.
Do you know what the coincidence is with that phrase?
No. Heaven's Gate? No.
Heaven's Gate, was a big movie flop like Cleopatra.
Oh, yeah. And also the cult that thought they would leave on a comet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
There was a cult, the Heaven's Gate cult, that thought they would leave on a comet.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I thought you were describing another movie. Okay, I know what you're talking about now.
No, they all killed themselves because they were going to join Halley's Comet.
Right, that's right. But anyway, Heaven's Gate was a big movie that cost $40 million and only earned $1 million. This movie,
that was from the family of the filmmakers. They just came and saw it over and over.
Yeah, this movie cost $42 million and earned 31. So it was not quite the Heaven's Gate of science fiction movies, but there's a coincidence between the two. And what it is that Brad Dourif was in both of them.
Oh, see, he cursed it. He cursed them.
I just thought that was fascinating.
Because he was playing his probably psychotic character that he always plays.
Right.
Yeah.
Boggs from X-Files.
Yeah.
Or Billy Bibbit from Cuckoo's Nest.
Billy Bibbit, yeah.
Anyway, that's the last word I have on this movie. It is the Heaven's Gate of science fiction films. I was bored. I was entertained a little bit, but not much.
Yeah, I've used a lot of words for this movie just because I'm so pissed off that it could have been good and it wasn't.
Well, and this podcast has turned out to be quite long, but it's with a bad movie, which is unusual.
Which is unusual. Usually we try to get in and out of those.
Right.
But I would not recommend. I would recommend people see it just for the sheer, oh my God, jaw-droppingly bad this is sort of thing. Also, as the new movie comes out this year, and also Apple Plus is doing Foundation finally, which this Herbert was severely influenced by Foundation, which is an Isaac Asimov series of short stories turned into a trilogy in the 40s. So that's another one that we should talk about when it comes out.
Well, so it's topical anyway. It was topical because the remake's coming out. I don't guess you would call it a remake, a reimagining maybe.
Yeah, hopefully it is the novel and not the movie. And it, the trailer did have Pink Floyd doing a clip. So yay, there you go.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
That's what scares me is I'm hoping that Villeneuve, the director guy, I'm hoping that he's taken the best elements of Lynch's monstrosity
visuals
and then the best elements of Jodorowsky and has made the book, hopefully.
Hopefully he's alluding to them with tongue inserted in cheek because he knows what he's doing. We'll see.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We'll see. Great job with Blade Runner 42. So we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And with that said, I guess we are going to end today's podcast. We've been talking a lot about bad movies, sandworms, weird optical effects, and Ken Russell. Oh, not to mention Toto and Brian Eno. If you're tuning in to us for the first time, welcome. Sorry you had to stumble in on this abomination. But we
hopefully
do
you'll come
back. We're glad you're here. If you're listening, if you would like to see us or some of these visuals we're talking about, we are also on YouTube. And if you do join us there, please subscribe and rate us. It means a lot to us, even though it's just a click of a button to you. David and I also have some bonus shows on Patreon called the Dilithium Chamber and X-Files Declassified for about a coffee or two a month, you could subscribe to those shows as well, or just tune in over there because we've got a lot of free stuff there as well. Anything else on your side of the podcast, David?
Thank you again for doing it. I appreciate doing it every week, and we'll definitely next week will be fun too.
Next week we're going back into horror world where I can have a little more control over this shit.
You can have a little bit more control.
All right. I'll see you later.
All right, bye, man.
All right, bye.
Can't start the car. Johnny